They say you can measure a man by how he handles humiliation. If that's true, then I've had a lifetime's worth in one afternoon. It started on a Thursday, the kind of day that smells like burnt coffee and corporate perfume. Everyone was in a rush, trying to look more important than they felt. I wasn't supposed to be there. Not officially. Just another analyst tucked away in a cubicle with spreadsheets and quiet competence. I remember the email notification flashing on my monitor. Project Lead, Strategy Review. 3 p.m., Conference Room A. My name wasn't on the invite. It should have been. The presentation being discussed? I built it. I stayed 3 nights that week refining numbers my manager, Greg, didn't even understand. He took the deck, slapped his name on the title slide, and said, "Good job, man. You make me look smart." That line aged fast. At 2:58 p.m., I grabbed my notebook and headed toward Conference Room A. Greg was standing outside, hands in his pockets, smirk ready. A couple of team leads lingered near the door, all suits and fake laughter. He saw me coming and turned his body just enough to block the entrance. "Hey, champ," he said, tone casual. "Small room today. We're keeping it tight. Director level and above." I looked past him. There were interns in there. A guy from marketing who once asked me if Excel could translate languages. Tight, huh? "Greg," I said evenly, "I built the projections they're reviewing." He tilted his head, mock sympathy. "I know, buddy, but you know how it is. Optics. Don't take it personally." I did. He patted my shoulder, twice like he was rewarding a child who just colored inside the lines, and stepped inside. The door shut behind him. I could hear muffled voices, laughter, the clink of coffee mugs. My hands were still in my pockets, but my pulse was crawling up my throat. For a second, I just stood there staring at the frosted glass. Behind it, Greg was gesturing toward slides I had created pixel by pixel. I knew every graph, every forecast. I could even picture his mouth forming the words I'd written. A few coworkers walked by, eyes sliding past me. No one said anything because no one ever does. In that moment, I realized how invisible competence is. You can carry a company quietly for months, and the second you stop speaking, people forget you exist. I went back to my desk, didn't slam anything, didn't curse. I opened my inbox and found 3 unread messages from Greg. Make sure to print the KPI handouts. Double-check the Q3 revenue segment. Bring me a hard copy. I almost laughed. The arrogance of someone who thinks you'll still fetch his papers after he's locked you out of the room. So I didn't print anything. I didn't even touch the file. I just watched the clock tick toward 3:30. When the meeting ended, the herd poured out, all congratulations and fake humility. Greg was in the middle basking. He caught my eye, smirk still glued in place. "How'd we do?" I asked, neutral. "Crushed it," he said, straightening his tie. "The VP loved the numbers. Might even pitch them upstairs." "Oh," he paused, lowering his voice. "Don't take that meeting thing the wrong way. It's just business, you know?" "Sure," I said. "Just business." But inside, something shifted. A kind of quiet I hadn't felt before. Not defeat, not anger. Precision. That evening, as everyone headed home, I stayed behind. The office emptied until it was just the hum of air conditioning and the faint glow of the city through the windows. I opened a folder on my desktop labeled Legacy Accounts. It wasn't company property. It was mine. A list of registered entities. One of them was the holding firm that owned 47% of Greg's beloved company. I clicked the file, and there it was. The name that tied everything together. My name. Not public, not loud, but legal. 2 years earlier, I'd invested through a silent partnership. It was supposed to be a learning experience. I wanted to understand how people lead when they think no one's watching. Turns out, they don't lead. They perform. I closed the file, shut down my computer, and looked around the office one last time. The same office that treated me like furniture. Greg's laughter still echoed faintly down the hall. I didn't hate him. You can't hate what's already beneath you. But that was just the beginning. Greg didn't just smirk. He wore it like a badge. The morning after the meeting, he strolled past my desk, doing that two-finger gun thing at people who never held a deliverable longer than a latte. Someone said, "Great deck yesterday," as he walked by. He said, "Team effort," without slowing down, like the credits roll whenever he breathes. At 9:12, he pinged me. "Need the sensitivity tabs unlocked. VP wants to see upside case by noon. Thiex." The file was mine. I'd locked the tabs because the macros weren't idiot-proof, and frankly, neither was management. I typed back, "Happy to walk you through it." He replied with a thumbs-up emoji and nothing else. At 9:30, he appeared over my shoulder, breath mint and cologne, trying to negotiate a truce. "Just shoot me the password," he said. "I'm in a rush." "Then let's do it right," I answered, sliding my chair back and opening the model. I moved slowly, deliberately. He hated slow. "See this toggle? Change it without recalculating churn, and your margin goes from tight to fantasy." He gave a tight smile. "Listen, champ, I don't need a tutorial. I need the password." "I'm accountable for the output," I said quietly. "If the VP's name is on it, my numbers need to be real." He stared at me long enough for the silence to feel like a test, and said too lightly, "Don't get precious." Then he walked off, empty-handed. 10 minutes later, he CC'd me on a pre-read he'd already sent upstairs, where my model had apparently learned to dance without me. He'd copied the top-line table into a new workbook and started poking it with a stick. Line items were rounded where they shouldn't be. The upside case had growth assumptions that belonged in a pitch deck for unicorns. I sat there and watched irresponsibility put on a tie. I drafted an email to fix it and stopped myself. Not because I was afraid to correct him, but because I was done being the quiet janitor for other people's messes. I printed the pre-read marked 3 silent errors only I would notice and put it on my desk. The paper felt heavier than it should. Maybe that's what happens when something carries the weight of a pattern. Around 11, the VP's assistant called. "Greg says you can grab the conference line if they have questions about the model." "Sure," I said, "if they ask." At 11:20, I heard Greg in the glass box on the north side, pacing while he talked. His voice rose a notch when someone interrupted him. He did the thing where he laughs like the question is cute, and then repeats the same sentence slower, as if clarity is volume. I watched his shoulders stiffen. A beat later, he pinged me. "Jump?" One word, no punctuation, sweat baked into it. I typed, "Here if needed," and I waited. He didn't add me. It's a particular kind of anger when you realize people expect you to save them privately so they can perform publicly. It's not loud. It's precise. I sat still and let the clock do whatever clocks do when you don't help a man finish writing your erasure. He emerged at 11:58, a shade paler, grin welded back on with cheap glue. "All good," he announced to no one. Then he leaned on my cubicle wall like we were teammates. "Small hiccup. You'll send me the correct churn driver, yeah?" "It's in the model," I said. "You know what I mean." "I do," I said, and turned back to my screen. That afternoon, HR sent a reminder about appropriate access to meetings and chain of command. The timing was decorative. Greg had friends. He also had tells. Whenever he felt shaky, he ran to policy like a man running to a fence he'd earlier told everyone was optional. I closed the email and opened a calendar window I rarely used at work, the one connected to the quiet addresses nobody knew I owned. I sent 2 invitations. The first went to Legal, a routine shareholder governance review, quarterly housekeeping, updated list of beneficial owners, confirmed notices for the annual general meeting. Boring on purpose. The second went to the board's coordinator, availability check, special session on capital allocation and operating leadership. 4 lines. No adjectives. I'm not dramatic. I grew up around people who believed that if you're right, you don't need to shout. You file. You schedule. You show up. The rest of the week, Greg turned the volume up. He started forgetting to pull me into quick huddles, then walking past my desk afterward with a recap that sounded like a man translating a language he didn't speak. Friday, he announced a war room for Monday at 7 a.m. "We're going to run this like winners," he said, hands clasped, chin lifted. He gave out rolls like prizes and handed me the marker duty. "I won't be here at 7, I said. He blinked. "Come again?" "I'll be in at 9. "Everyone's in at 7. "Then everyone except me is in at 7, I said. The words fell flat, no heat on them. He glanced around to see if anyone would clap for authority. No one did. He followed me to my desk afterward, voice softer. "Look, I know the meeting thing looked bad. Optics, you know. I'm protecting you." "From what?" "From you sometimes," he said, like he'd just delivered wisdom. "You're intense. Senior folks don't love that coming from, your level." He smiled like a guidance counselor. "Let me take the hits. You keep feeding me the gold. That's how we both win." It took effort not to laugh. "I'm clear on how you win," I said. "The rest is under review." He missed the sentence entirely because he was already nodding at his own reflection in the window. That's the spirit. That night, I stopped by the copy room on the way out and ran 3 single-page prints, a capped summary of the holding company registry, the proxy rights clause that everyone skims, and a letter on cream paper that said nothing except dates and times. I sealed them in a folder and dropped it with the receptionist for the board coordinator. Attention only. No drama. Logistics. Monday, he went for spectacle. He taped timelines to walls and wrote slogans in dry erase like we were staging a pep rally for a spreadsheet. He called it a culture reset. He wrote all in block letters and underlined it twice. If the numbers didn't scare the VP, the marker fumes might. At 9:07, the VP poked her head in and asked for a quick look at the assumptions behind the upside case Greg had sold. "Bring your analyst," she said. Greg glanced at me like we were going to a father-son dinner. "Evan, with me." We walked to her office. She shut the door behind us and didn't offer chairs. "Explain the churn delta," she said to Greg. No smile. He launched into a paragraph that sounded like a TED Talk on hopeful arithmetic. She let him finish, then turned to me without turning her head. "Is that accurate?" "No," I said. "Just the word." "Why?" "Because attrition doesn't drop when price rises unless you offset with service improvements or lock-in. We have neither. The number in the pre-read assumed both." She looked at Greg. "Why did you present that?" He tried a joke about optimism. It died in the air. She nodded once, crisp. "Fix it. Today." We left in silence. In the hallway, he hissed, "You trying to bury me?" "You did that part," I said, and walked back to my desk. That was my small explosion. Not a fire, just the spark in the right direction. By noon, the all-hands tone had changed. People were quieter. Laughter came more carefully. Someone finally asked me directly for the model, instead of asking Greg to ask me. I sent it and watched competence. For once, take the front door. For the first time in months, I ate lunch without feeling like I was swallowing sand. At 3 p.m., a calendar alert popped. Special session. Board. Location. Conference room. C, the one with the art that looks expensive because it's large. Start time. Wednesday, 8 a.m. Attendees, small list, heavy names. Greg wasn't on it. Neither was I officially. I closed the alert and let the quiet sit where panic used to live. He ended the day by stopping at my desk with the smile again, smaller now. "We good?" he asked, like a man negotiating with weather. "We're accurate," I said. He laughed like that was a joke. He had no idea the next invite he'd care about would be the one that didn't arrive. I didn't know it yet, but that decision would cost them everything. By Tuesday night, the office was a hive pretending to sleep. Greg's all-in posters were curling at the corners, the smell of dry erase ink fading, optimism rotting quietly under fluorescent light. He didn't know it, but his name had already been crossed out of the next quarter's org chart. The paperwork wasn't personal. Paperwork never is. It was arithmetic. Behavior meets consequence. Signature meets ink. At 7:42 p.m., I sat alone in my apartment, phone face down, laptop open to a document I'd written weeks before. Statement of Operational Reassessment. Internal Realignment Plan. It was a polite phrase for, "We're cleaning house." I reread it once, deleted 2 adjectives, and hit print. Wednesday came quiet, gray, the kind of sky that looks like it's holding its breath. I arrived early. Even the janitor gave me a look like he wasn't used to seeing analysts before sunrise. By 7:30, the boardroom was ready. Polished table, bottled water, lined like soldiers, projector humming. The coordinator nodded at me as she checked the list. At 7:55, the doors opened. The directors filed in. A parade of calm faces and old money. They didn't know me well, only as E. Hart, minority investor representative. I'd kept it that way on purpose. And then Greg walked by the glass wall, still talking too loud into his phone, telling someone he was about to kill this meeting. His reflection caught mine for half a second. He didn't wave. At 8:01, the chairman cleared his throat. "Before we begin," he said, "we'll address a pending issue regarding internal leadership performance. Mr. Hart has requested to present findings." Greg's hand froze on the door handle. He blinked. Once, twice. Then he laughed, that half-snickering laugh of a man who thinks he's being pranked. "Mr. Who?" I looked up from my notes. "Morning, Greg." The smirk flickered. "Wait, what's going on here?" The chairman gestured toward the seat across from me. "Have a seat, Mr. Reynolds." He hesitated, then sat. The silence that followed could have cut paper. I slid a folder across the table, one with a pale blue cover, company logo embossed. "These are the Q3 projections," I said, "along with 3 separate financial inconsistencies tied to your department's reporting." Greg blinked again. "You're accusing me of what? Math errors?" I met his eyes. "You presented a false upside case to the VP and the board. Twice," he scoffed. "You can't, this isn't your lane, kid." The chairman shifted slightly. "It's very much his lane, Mr. Reynolds. Mr. Hart represents the holding entity that owns a controlling stake in this company." Greg's mouth opened, but no sound came out. He looked at me like I'd suddenly started speaking another language. "What?" he said finally, whispering. "I'm a silent partner," I replied evenly. "Bought in 2 years ago. Sat in your meetings, did your grunt work, watched how you handled people when you thought no one was watching." The air in the room thickened. One of the directors coughed softly, the kind of sound polite people make when witnessing an execution. Greg's hands twitched. "This is insane. You're lying. You're some junior analyst who you blocked from the meeting where you used my work," I said. "I'm aware." He turned toward the chairman, voice cracking a little. "You're just going to sit there and let this stunt happen?" The chairman leaned back. "We've reviewed the documents. Mr. Hart's ownership and authority are verified, and frankly, his analysis is correct." The quiet that followed wasn't silence. It was something denser. Shame has weight when it lands on marble. Greg tried again. "Look, okay, maybe I pushed the forecast, but that's salesmanship. Everyone does it." I kept my voice flat. "You didn't push it, you falsified it, and then you lied to your team to cover it." He turned to me, desperate now. "Why are you doing this?" I looked at him for a long second. "Because you taught me what happens when people think power protects them. Consider this, a correction." A pause. Then the chairman spoke. "Mr. Reynolds, your employment is suspended pending termination review. Security will assist you in collecting your belongings." He stared at me, eyes wide, face pale. "You set me up." "No," I said. "You did that part yourself. I just gave you the mirror." He stood up, chair scraping, a sound that cracked through the boardroom like static. "You think you're some kind of hero?" "No," I said quietly. "Heroes fix things. I just stopped pretending not to see them." He glared at me one last time, jaw trembling like a man chewing regret. Then he walked out, escorted by security. The door clicked shut, and the room exhaled. The chairman turned back to me. "You handled that with restraint." "Restraint," I said, almost smiling. That's what they always call it when you wait before striking. He nodded, impressed or cautious, maybe both. As the meeting resumed, I sat still, watching the city wake outside the window. People hurrying, cars flashing, the world pretending nothing just shifted. They thought I was gone. I wasn't. By the time Greg's name disappeared from the company directory, the office had already adjusted. People act like power evaporates suddenly, but really it fades. Slowly, quietly, until the space where someone used to stand just feels like air. 2 days after the board meeting, his desk was cleared, the monitor unplugged, the coffee mug gone, even the stupid "Work hard, win big" poster folded and tossed. No one touched it. They just let it fall behind the cabinet. That morning, HR sent a short email. Effective immediately, Greg Reynolds is no longer with the company. Please direct all departmental matters to interim leadership. No thank you for your service. No best wishes. Just the punctuation of irrelevance. People whispered, "Of course. They always do. Did you hear? I heard he got caught. He must have pissed off someone high up." Someone. I didn't correct them. I just walked through the hallway like everyone else, clipboard in hand, expression neutral. The quiet part of revenge is watching people realize they underestimated silence. By noon, my inbox filled with small, nervous messages. The same colleagues who once avoided my eyes were suddenly friendly, polite, available. "Hey, Evan, just wanted to check. Do you need any help with the rollout?" Rollout. That's what they called the fallout of a man's ego. I answered them all the same way, concise, professional, distant. I didn't want their apology. I wanted their accuracy. At 3 the VP asked me to step into her office. She gestured toward the chair opposite hers, Greg's chair, the one that had carried 100 small humiliations. "I won't take much of your time," she said. The board was impressed and surprised. "That makes two of us," I replied. She smiled faintly. "You've been sitting in the trenches with them, quietly fixing what others broke. We could use more of that at the leadership level." "I didn't do it for promotion," I said. "Good," she answered. "That's why you'll last." She slid a document across the desk, an interim leadership appointment. My name, printed cleanly under Director of Strategic Operations. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even satisfying at first. Just still, like a weight shifting from one side of the scale to the other. I left her office, paper in hand, and passed the glass conference room where Greg used to hold his vision sessions. The chairs were rearranged, the whiteboard wiped clean. One of the interns, the same kid Greg had yelled at for breathing too loud, was setting up for a small project review. I stopped. "Need a hand?" I asked. The kid looked startled. No, sir, I've got it." "Good," I said. "Carry on." He smiled like he'd just been given permission to exist. Maybe he had. The rest of the day moved slowly. Meetings, emails, signatures. But beneath it all was something I hadn't felt in months. Control without noise. No gloating. No scenes. Just quiet realignment. Around 6, when most of the floor had emptied, I walked past Greg's old office. The cleaning crew had left the lights on. Inside, the chair sat turned slightly away from the desk, like it was waiting for someone who'd never return. I closed the door behind me and sat down in it. For a moment, I just let the silence breathe. I thought about the first day he'd blocked me from a meeting, the way his smirk felt like a stamp, the way I'd swallowed it, quietly, thinking patience was weakness. Turns out, patience is just revenge with better timing. The city lights flickered through the blinds, stripes of gold and shadow across the table. My phone buzzed once, a message from an unknown number. "You win. Hope it was worth it." No name, but I didn't need one. I typed back, "It was never about winning. It was about balance." Then I deleted his number. When I stood to leave, I noticed something small on the edge of the desk. A single paperclip bent into a half circle. Greg used to flick those across the room during meetings, tiny metallic reminders that he was bored with everyone else's ideas. I picked it up, straightened it carefully, and placed it in the center of the desk. The next morning, the building felt different, lighter. People greeted each other without checking who was watching. The intern brought donuts. Someone laughed, really laughed, near the printer. Culture for once didn't need a slogan on the wall. That afternoon, during a department huddle, I said the only thing that needed saying. No one here works for anyone, I told them. We work with each other. Respect isn't a reward, it's a requirement. No applause, just quiet nods. That was enough. Later, when the office emptied, I walked to the big glass window overlooking the city. My reflection stared back, calm, steady, ringless fingers resting on the railing. Revenge had come and gone, leaving only stillness behind. No fireworks, no grand speeches, just the echo of justice done cleanly. They thought I'd wanted payback. I didn't. I wanted peace. And peace doesn't shout. I picked up my bag, turned off the light, and left the office in silence. Because sometimes silence sounds louder than applause.